for ventilators, for PPEs, for the workers, for masks. Even things as simple as swabs are not always available. And we in New York City and New York State, but around the country, hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. Our big hospitals, our medium-sized hospitals, and our small hospitals. And the small and rural hospitals actually face the risk of closing if we don't help them. So we Senate Democrats have been pushing very hard for an increase, a significant increase in money for the healthcare system. And we are very, very pleased with what seems to be moving forward in the bill, in the bipartisan bill that we hope will be brought to the floor. Second, workers first. The title of our Democratic plan has been Workers First. We believe we have to put working people, families, average Americans ahead of anybody else. They're losing their jobs through no fault of their own. Their kids are staying home because there's no school. There are so many problems that are befalling average people. And so we wanted to put them first. That's been our number one goal, along with the Marshall Plan for hospitals. And this bill, as it comes forward, as it's now at least being agreed upon, has a lot of that. It has unemployment insurance on steroids. This is a great plan. What it says is if you lose your job in this crisis, you can be furloughed by your employer. That means you stay on that employer's work list. If you have health benefits with the employer, you can keep getting them. But, and most importantly, the federal government will pay your salary, your full salary, for now 4 months. We had asked for 4 months, and 4 months looks like what we're going to get when we come to this agreement. It will mean two things. Most of all, it will put money into the hands of those who need it so much because they've lost their jobs, as I said, through no fault of their own. So that is vitally important, and that will pump money into the economy probably in a better way than anything else could do it. But it also has the second benefit. It will keep companies intact. The small restaurant owner, the middle-sized business, even the large businesses worry that if they just had to remove their workers, fire them, because they don't have any money coming in, that those workers would scatter to the winds, they'd look for other jobs, and when, God willing, this awful crisis is over, these businesses would not be able to reassemble. But with our plan, since they stay on the payroll of their employer, as soon as the crisis is over, they all can come back together. And that small restaurant, that middle-sized manufacturing facility, the service business, will be able to reassemble quickly, and we can get the economy going again. That's another thing we've been fighting for. We've been fighting very hard for any bailout fund, money to industries that have trouble, have real oversight and transparency. That's vitally important. We cannot have a situation where when a company is getting money from the Treasury, Federal Reserve, that we don't know about it. And we've been pushing hard that any contract that the federal government makes with a company to give it loans, that we know of that contract in a very short period of time, that we can examine it. We in the Senate, those in the House, the press, and the American public will see if these things are on the level, because we all know there was a load of dissatisfaction with TARP. In addition, we're fighting for oversight. A new Inspector General to be able to look into these contracts. We would like very much, and believe we should have, a Congressional Oversight Board as well. and we're fighting for transparency, oversight, disclosure when the federal government gives corporations money. We're also wanting to make sure that workers are put first in these situations. So when there are direct federal grants and direct federal loans to these companies, they either have incentive or mandate to keep their employees and their benefits. And we're making very good progress in that direction as well. Small business. We all ache for these small business owners, probably second to the people who have illness in their families. We ache for these folks. We know, my father was a small businessman. He had a little exterminating business, never very successful. He would pace the floor Sunday nights at 2 a.m. because he hated going to work. So I know what people go through. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into your small business, and all of a sudden it looks like it's blown away. Well, there's a very fine proposal, bipartisan, on small business that I believe will be in this package as well. So there are lots of good things here. We all know that not everyone is going to want every provision. We all know that there are many things that so many of us want are left out. But we all know that we must do these things. We are not looking for things that are extraneous to this crisis. And I don't believe that they are in this package. We are looking at things that deal directly with this crisis. And that's what we have proposed here as Democrats in the Senate. Whether it be workers first, helping our medical system, providing oversight and transparency in the boards, helping small business. Those are all directly related to the crisis. We need them soon. We need them desperately. In the last few days, we have made huge progress in achieving these goals. And again, I hope, I pray, that we can come together very quickly and pass in large numbers a bipartisan bill that will help the American people who so badly, badly, badly need our help. I yield the floor.
And good day, I'm Andrea Mitchell. We are getting a little bit of an early start with this dire new warning from New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who just said that the apex is higher than they thought and sooner than they thought. That is a bad set of facts. Adding that state cases are doubling every 3 days. You just heard Chuck Schumer on the Hill say that they are on the 2-yard line and believe they can resolve the gridlock over that $2 trillion stimulus aid relief package, and it could be breaking in the next few hours. Round-the-clock negotiations today between Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Republicans, and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin continuing at this hour. As Chuck Schumer said, some compromises have already been reached. Leader Schumer adding, as we say, that they are at the 2-yard line. President Trump tweeting this morning that Congress must approve the deal, while he is also pushing back on shutdown orders, arguing that the economy needs to get restarted sooner rather than later. This is against the advice, of course, of his own scientific task force and other medical experts. Any bipartisan Senate deal with the White House cannot become law, of course, without agreement by the democratically controlled House of Representatives. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has outlined her chief concerns today, and the Speaker joins me now from Capitol Hill. Madam Speaker, thank you so very much for joining us at such a critical time in our government. It's very important to hear from leaders. You've just heard Chuck Schumer say that they're on the 2-yard line. From your perspective, the House Democrats have yet to be heard from. What needs to be in this bill that is now being negotiated between Mitch McConnell, Senator Secretary Mnuchin, and the Democrats in the Senate in order to get House approval?
Well, first of all, we have written our bill that we put forth that contains some of the features that are now in the Senate bill, that will be in the Senate bill. I commend Chuck Schumer. He's done a remarkable job, along with the Senate Democrats, in holding the line until some changes were made that reflect both House and Senate concerns. One is more funding for state and local governments, since you mentioned Governor Cuomo. I'll begin with that. And then a robust unemployment insurance initiative that is in there. The initiatives for small business are very essential so that people can get paid and businesses can stay open and survive. I agree with Chuck that small businesses are so important to our economy. I always say there's nothing more optimistic that anyone can do than to start a small business with all the challenges that are there. Maybe except get married, but I don't know. I'll leave that there. But in terms of other issues that are there, we have a robust appropriations component of this bill that will be helpful. There's some things that just are not happening. But I'd rather not negotiate on TV on this, because hopefully some of these issues will go away. My hope is that while we're in the red zone here, that we get across the finish line, and that we do so in a way that we can bring our bill to the floor under unanimous consent. Another option we have, though, is to bring it to the floor and amend it, because we have some additions that we think would be very helpful to America's workers. And the third, of course, would be to pass our bill. All of that takes longer. We wish there had been a four-cornered discussion of this sooner. Now, remember this, Andrea, this is a $2 trillion bill. Nobody saw any of it until Saturday. It's now Tuesday. So time is of the essence. We appreciate the urgency, but this is a $2 trillion bill. That is a very, very tall order, and we want to make sure that whatever we are doing, that it recognizes the urgency, that the checks are getting to the people in time. And I will also say that I commend all of us, Chuck being in the lead there, on what was done for transparency with the slush fund, $500 billion slush fund for the secretary. It now has oversight in terms of an inspector general specifically for that account, and also has a panel, a congressional panel, small, 5 people, to oversee how that money is distributed. So that was a big advance as well. So there are many good things, but there's some things that relate to worker safety, and we're about the workers. This is not we don't want a trickle-down bill, or what's good for up here, you take the drippings. No, this is a bubble up. And I'm very pleased with the progress that we have made for workers, and also when the money is given to certain companies, that they do not use it for buyouts, bonuses, CEO pay, and layoffs, but instead do it for what its purpose is, to help the workers.
Well, to that very point, the president was asked yesterday about the $500 billion and the oversight, and initially there was not transparency. We understand that has now been negotiated. We'll get to see the final language, of course. Let me play what the president said at that briefing last night.
It's about the lack of oversight. The Treasury had this unilateral authority to dole out all of this money.
Well, look, I'll be the oversight. We're going to make good deals. We make good deals.
He said he would be the oversight. Now, as we understand it, Chuck Schumer has managed to negotiate with Secretary Mnuchin in the overnight hours and today, and that oversight is now there. There will be a congressional oversight committee. There will not be the 6 months where Mnuchin would be the sole authority. Is that your understanding? And if it is that change, would that be acceptable to you?
Well, no, it's not acceptable. It's in our bill. It's in our bill. It's a House bill and Senate proposal. We are each taking credit for that, but nonetheless, it's in our bill. The president, you don't want me to comment on the president saying he's the oversight. Why don't we just move on from that?
Well, it does raise the question of whether or not you have confidence that what is coming out can be voted on, and that Secretary Mnuchin is accommodating to demands from Democrats, as well as I suspect from some Republicans, that there be oversight over this amount of money, which there was not, arguably, in 2008, with the last big bailout.
Well, let me just say this. When we had our meeting on, this is about who has the leverage. The leverage has to be balanced, and that workers have a strong role. I know corporations create business. We want everyone to succeed. We root for the stock market to go up. We're all on common ground on that. But a lot of the success of our country stems from our workers and the reliability they have that they will continue to be employed in a time, especially at a time like this. So on Sunday, when we met, the M's, Mnuchin, McConnell, McCarthy, and then Chuck and I said, well, since it's Sunday morning, I want to quote His Holiness Pope Francis. And Pope Francis' world prayer was that those who have the responsibility for the care of people would be enlightened to take responsibility. And I think that's what we have to do, take responsibility. I think there's been a lack of taking responsibility. However, when I quoted Pope Francis, then Mnuchin said, well, you're quoting the Pope, I'm going to quote the markets. I thought he was going to quote the Old Testament or something. I'm going to quote the markets. Well, I think it spelled out how we have to come together with common values for the success of people to bubble up for the success of our economy, because we are a consumer economy. Now, I do think that the light at the end of the tunnel has to be a cure, and we have to get there as soon as possible. Science-based, evidence-based decision-making about testing and again, research to get a cure. If we continue to sort of just change one day to the next about how decisions are made and not based on science, that light at the end of the tunnel could be the proverbial train coming at us. But I do think that we have the best minds working 24/7, all hands on deck, to get to a place that is the best message of all, that there is a cure.
I want to get to some of the other points that was in your bill, and much of this is already incorporated in the compromise legislation still being worked on. One is state aid to state and local governments. Another is unemployment insurance for 4 months.
Yes.
And I think Senator Schumer has just confirmed it will be full pay for the idled workers for 4 months.
Right.
And then direct payments. Is it direct payments to people who are making under $100,000, or I don't know if that number is changing, as well as food security? Are those some of your key arguments in terms of policies?
Things. Yeah. One thing that I was concerned about last night was that we had a 15% increase in SNAP and food stamp, the food security and nutrition initiatives. And so last night they said to us, that's out. I hope that that is not the case, because that's so needed and this time. And as I say, this increase was just in terms of the coronavirus. We're not making policy and saying this applies to, forevermore. We hope it would, but that's not the point of this bill. And that's, so when they say, oh, they're trying to do this, that, and the other thing, no, we're just trying to address the crisis that we have right now in the most intense way, and try to restrict everything that was done by us or them to addressing the COVID-19 challenge that we have. But it is, again, it's about, when they came out with their bill, it was trickle down. Our bill is bubble up, and I think we're finding a place where there's a recognition that we have to take care of our workers if our economy is going to survive. It's not only the right thing to do, it's what consumer confidence is what grows the economy. So again, we want to be able to obey the science and pray for a cure, but I think science is an answer to our prayers, so they kind of go together.
And to that point also, the president tweeted today, our people want to return to work. He tweeted, they will practice social distancing and all else, and seniors will be watched over protectively and lovingly. We can do two things together. The cure cannot be worse by far than the problem. Congress must act now. We will come back strong. He has suggested last night and on Twitter and in his briefing and again now today that he thinks people should go back sooner rather than later, which is in contradiction with his own task force with Dr. Fauci and others. What would be your message about whether, as reluctant as people are to see the economy tank, whether we have to get past this surge before we can consider coming back? And it is going to be more than 2 weeks.
Oh, as I said, this is not a time for notion mongering. It is a time for serious, evidence-based, scientific decision making. Scientists speaking truth to power. You can look at the examples around the world and where there was confinement, where people stayed at home. If you look at China, in Wuhan, they didn't do this early enough, 100,000 cases. In Singapore and Hong Kong, where they acted differently, a teeny percentage of that number infected. So when the president says, if you ask the doctors, they want to shut everything down, I think that was one of his other tributes to science, that you can't go to that place. And the cost to the economy of many more people getting affected and sick is a bigger cost than we're even seeing now. We don't want that to happen. We want the markets to go up. We want them to see hope and confidence that we're on a path to get the job done, whether it's seeking a cure, providing interim benefits for people who might lose their jobs, helping small businesses stay in business and thrive, stay in business at least until a time when they can thrive again, and to do so in a way that, again, puts workers first. That's just what it is. So we've been putting families and workers first. We passed three. Would be the third bill, but the first two were about research, development, about masks, about testing. We're so far behind in testing, and it's no use going into if only, if only, if only. My granddaughter Bella said to me the other day, it's no use, Mimi, just saying if only they had tested soon, if only they had used better tests, if only they had not fired the people who were doing this work. And what's just no more if onlys. Let's talk about what we're going to do about it. We can have an after action review later about some of this. But the fact is we cannot continue to make statements about what should come next if they're not based on science and evidence and data of people who know more about this than any of us.
Dr. Fauci has not been seen at recent briefings with the president. There's a lot of solid reporting that the president is not happy about the way he pushed back against some of the president's pronouncements on drugs that had not been properly tested and using other drugs, alternative drugs, before they were approved. Would the Congress, would you be concerned if Dr. Fauci is pushed down after having served since the Reagan years or not listened to?
Yes, of course. Dr. Fauci has been on a pedestal for many years for many of us who've worked with him. I started over 30 years ago on HIV and AIDS, and he was our champion. George W. Herbert Walker Bush at that time called him a hero, his hero, when they asked him who his hero was. Over time, he has been a tremendous intellectual and scientific source to every challenge we have faced. And I, frankly, myself thought, I didn't know where the scientists were, that the president was making some of the decisions or statements, not I would say decisions, that he made about being in denial about the scope of the virus at the beginning. And I made my views known to Dr. Fauci. But Dr. Fauci is a truth teller. He's science, knowledge, evidence, data. And that's what we have to have if we're going to have a cure, and not just, I heard this works. He made a plea against anecdotal evidence, anecdotal stories that give people some hope that may or may not be, the standard being, is it efficacy and safety? Those are the two things. Is it going to be effective, or is it going to hurt you or be safe? And I think that nobody has a clearer picture of that than Dr. Fauci. And the country would be very well served if the decision makers listened to the science when it comes to issues regarding how we can stop this plague from. What the president is suggesting is really a formula for more uncertainty, more infections, and more harm to the economy. But I'm optimistic on our side that we can get something done. I praise Chuck and the Senate Democrats for staying strong. We've been working together in terms of the policy issues there. Great progress.
In other words, what she's trying to say is that we're in the eye of the storm. We are in the eye of the storm. The storm ain't going to go away. There's going to be fatalities out of this storm. Now, what's the next best step? The next best step is, okay, since we're on this ship together, Let's try to prevent from the ship sinking to the point of it being a total catastrophe towards killing all of us. Let's try to lower the fatality rate to the point that we don't have near as many injuries out of this storm. We know the storm is on top of us. The eye is fixing to be here over us. Now, what's the next best thing? Because we don't have bullets. We don't have resources to be able to push this away like it's some sort of a army, or like it's some sort of a, let's say, a bunch of wild animals, like it's a bunch of buffalo or a bunch of cows or a herd of even people. We don't have the resources to fight this in the way that the president is thinking to fight it. You can't fight it with guns, bullets, and missiles. The only way to fight it is to prepare for it. The only way to prepare for it is hunker down, dig in. That's what's on the side of my truck. Dig in. That was the reason why that God was leading me in the way that he was leading me. Digging in. Hunker down. In other words, if you can't accomplish what you need to accomplish one way, we will get our accomplishments the other way. Now, did we want to go this way? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is a horrible, horrible way to get anything accomplished. But the bottom line is that so many people had become contaminated with doubt. So many people had been contaminated with resistance. So many people had become contaminated with other types of diseases that has affected their minds to the point that they was all having this phobia about dying because it was too rich of a message that the messenger was giving to the people, with him being the messenger. Talking about myself. And I was not getting nothing accomplished, either through the church sector or through the political sector. And I for darn sure wasn't getting nothing accomplished through the general neighborhood sector. The general neighborhood around here had done already clammed up to the point that they wasn't going to come down here and support the windmill ministries. So now, regrettably, we go to the next level. We go to the next level of resistance. And if this doesn't work, I'm sure God's got in plans for another level. God's divine message coming from his messenger will take place one way or the other. Whenever God spoke to Moses, do you really think that Moses wanted to see all those catastrophes happen again and again and again, pertaining to the plagues, pertaining to the water turning red, pertaining to the diseases that killed the firstborn, pertaining to the locusts and all those other things that it talks about in the Bible that a lot of people to this day still don't believe? Still don't believe that those things occurred. No, God didn't want to do that. But he went through different levels, different periods. The same way with Noah. Do you really think that God wanted to destroy the old world with a flood? No, he didn't want to destroy the old world with a flood. But God looked around and said that he had regretted that he ever even made man. And he only found one righteous human being upon the planet, which was Noah. And he spoke to Noah, Noah, build me a boat. And of course he promised Noah, the next time that I get ready to do this again, indicating that he probably would have to do it again, the world will not be destroyed the next time with water. The next time it gets destroyed will be with fire and brimstone. Heat, fire, and brimstone. That's where we're at now. And like I said, if this entity that God is using towards basically lifting his umbrella of protection off of society, towards allowing for this pandemic, this plague, to circle the planet, and I promise you, it will circle the planet if it hadn't already. If that entity don't work, if that level of awareness don't work, then there'll be another awareness. Then if that level don't work, then there'll be another entity that God will bring forth, regardless whether it be a meteor falling out of the sky or a solar flare that destroys the majority of our communications pertaining to our satellites and our infrastructure. God is doing this or allowing for this to occur because he's trying to purge humanity. He's trying to get us back where he wants us to be. Once more, if you go back and reread those 4 chapters of Revelations where he's speaking to the churches, he says very, very specifically, I, this is God speaking, not Dennis, not Juby. This is God speaking. I have not found thy works perfect yet. Talking to the bride. Because his son is the bridegroom. The bride has not become perfect yet. So he's saying to repent, repent, repent. Or else I will throw thee off into a sick bed, a sick bed, a sick bed. That's where we are. That's presently where we are. Now, is that where God wanted us to be? No. No, it's not where he wanted us to be. But people are hard-headed. They're full of resistance. They're full of doubt. They're full of unbelief. They don't want to listen. Well, I got news for them. If they don't listen one way, they'll listen another, because it says in the Bible that the meek shall inherit the earth, and it says in the Bible that every knee will bow and that every tongue will profess that he is Lord. And if they're not willing to do it voluntarily, they'll be forced to do it involuntarily. And if they're not willing to do it in this lifetime, in the lifetime that we're living in today, then they'll be forced to do it in the lifetime to come. And of course, once God gets tired with society, there at the very last, after the 1,000-year millennium reign, and God himself will release Satan out of his prison to go and deceive the nations once more into Gog and Magog. It says in the Bible that great fire come out of heaven that consumed them that followed after Lucifer the final and last time. There will be a certain portion out of that portion that won't follow after Satan. There will be a certain portion that will realize, my God, this thing is real. If we continue to follow this idiot down the road here, we're all going to be doomed. That's right. You continue to follow after the demonic sources of darkness, and your not only physical life is going to be doomed, but your spiritual life will be doomed. That's the second death. That's the death that people don't want to have to go through. Because if you go through that second death, according to the Bible, it would have been better if you had never been born. According to the Bible, it would have been better that a millstone tied around your neck and you throw it off into the ocean somewhere. People has to wake up. We are destroying the planet Earth. We are destroying ourselves. We have brought this upon to ourselves.
Has been made. Not everything I want, but again, weighing the equity of what it means to move quickly and send that message is something that I'll have to discuss with my caucus in another hour.
This is going to be unlike anything that anybody's ever seen before. The odds of them coming up with an antidote to be able to cure this is like 1 billion zillion to 1 right now. Okay? But this disease is so aggressive, it's like the flu being on steroids, and it attacks the respiratory system. What you're looking at right here is worldwide deaths of 16,524. There's been over 603. This has gained 100 points just overnight. But this is steadily going up. Okay? This is going up, not down. These numbers are going up. These numbers are going up. The only numbers that are going down is the fatality rate going on over in South Korea and China. China's already got its chastisement and could actually come back and get it again, depending upon how safe that they are. They're going to have to be safe in order to make sure that this thing is no longer among them pertaining to this disease. And to me, it almost fits in the same category of whenever the day of Passover happened, whenever Moses had told the Pharaohs that whatever curse that comes out of your mouth will come back and haunt you. And of course, the Pharaoh said, talking to Moses about his firstborn, and the firstborn was not to be projected over to Moses, but rather than the Pharaohs. So what did Moses' people do? They put blood all over the face, lamb's blood, all over the face of their of their doors. That way, whenever the death angel come by, once the death angel seen the blood on the door, it knew to pass over that house, because there was godly people in that house. There was the children of Israel, and death actually went through that whole region. And I don't know if any type of theologians or scientists has ever figured out how many people actually died during that event, but I'm sure that it was hundreds of thousands of people that died. Hundreds of thousands of people that died. Once more, that was a supernatural force that come into people's lives that basically eliminated, separating the wheat from the chaff, separating the goats from the sheep, severing the wicked from among the just. It, in a way, it almost reminds me of the Passover, towards what we're looking at right now. You know as well as I do, rather than us put lamb's blood around our doorway, we now have the Holy Spirit. We don't have to put stuff like that indicating the Passover, that we're truly a child of God. But you better be authentic about what you're talking about, because if not, the death angel may very well come. And we know who the death angel is, which is no longer an angel, but the spirit of darkness, Lucifer, Satan. Once God lifts his hand off of a nation or off of the planet, this is what we see. We see numbers like this right here. And this right here is only the beginning phases of this. Okay? It has yet to sink into Syria, India, Africa, Australia, other parts of the world. This will be these numbers right here is very low in comparison to what we're fixing to see. Because to think that we're going to be able to miraculously create some sort of a miracle by waving a twan over ourselves, we're only fooling ourselves. So the next best thing is to do, like I said, once you realize you're in the eye of the storm, there's going to be fatalities. There's going to be wreckage. You need to now start concentrating on, how can I eliminate the wreckage? How can I eliminate the fatalities? What can we do to hunker down or to dig in to prepare for this? And that's where the experts, the doctors, the scientists, that's where they come in at, towards giving us good, sound, strong advice. And there's no doubt, there's always hope. There's always hope, especially those that turn in the right direction during something like this, because this is unprecedented. This only happens like once every century. But it happens for a reason. It happens for a purpose. And it's God's way of pruning. It's God's way of purging the planet, separating the wheat or the chaff from among the wheat.
Madam Speaker, can you give us an update on the members? There were 3 members who had been tested positive and were suffering from this virus, the coronavirus. Are any more affected? Can you give us any update? And tell us what you think the possibility is for remote voting. I know that Congressman McGovern, the Rules Chairman, had some advice that remote voting was not going to work. What other options are there if more people get sick?
Well, first of all, I'm not at liberty to divulge. It remains for the Capitol physician to say how many members may be affected. I don't know of any more. He may, but again, this is personal, private, and confidential. So I don't know of any more than what you mentioned. On the other, in terms of remote voting, one of the advantages of the UC is that we'll act quickly.
Unanimous
and we will
consent.
not have. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Unanimous consent, and that's a hard thing to get. But again, that's a path. I asked the chair of the Rules Committee, Mr. McGovern, to put forth a report. He did a study, put the report forth, and what we know is that it's challenging. And if you want to do it, you still have to come here and vote to do it. So I think the options are UC, or else take a vote on the floor without a roll call vote. Just without a roll call vote, yes or no, the ayes have it, or then some options that Mr. McGovern put forth. Pairing, which has a precedent. Pairing where if I'm a no, you're a yes, we cancel each other out. Proxy voting, which has precedent in committees, but not in the full committee of the House. And then, of course, remote voting, which really is something that we should prepare for always as an option in terms of the technology. But there are serious constitutional, technological, and security concerns about it. None that they can be addressed. But again, it is, for right now, we're just working very hard to get unanimous consent so we can get this bill done and then consider what the options are later. And it may be that we have no choice but that. But if it is the case, we want to be fully prepared. And none of those systems work unless you practice, practice, practice to make sure it works the time when the day comes that we have to use it in terms of, you know about technology. It's a wonderful thing, but it has its glitches, and we've seen some examples of that. But anyway, it's not without discussion.
I just want to give you a chance to respond to things that the president has tweeted, that Mitch McConnell said yesterday, saying that they were close to a deal, and then you came back. You came back from your extended vacation. This is the back and forth that we're seeing, and I just wanted to give you a chance to respond if you choose to.
Well, I don't really make it a habit of paying attention to any attacks from the president, because every knock from him is a boost for me. But I wish I had been on a one-day vacation, not much less extended. We were working constantly, as all of our members, constant conference calls with the small business, with the hospitals, with people of faith, the faith-based community and their concerns, nonprofits, labor, people in labor, all the labor unions. The list goes on and on. Constant calls with scientists and the rest that I say. So that's...
In other words, they're being bombarded right now. They're being overwhelmed. And that's the reason why whenever you look at someone like Nancy Pelosi, I hate to use this expression. She looks like she's been rode hard and put up wet. But she looks like that she has been through the mill as far as psychologically, emotionally, towards having to stay up, not getting proper sleep. In other words, these people are actually working for their money right now. And it's overwhelming them because you can see the expression on their faces. Donald Trump, about a week or so ago, he looked like he had been through the mill. Looked like looked like somebody drug him through hell. It's having a profound effect upon many, many people that psychologically have not been used to this type of pressure. They don't get good sleep. They're rolling and tossing and turning at night. They're taking on not one telephone call or two, that's their normal rate, but 22 or maybe 122. I don't know. But it's having a profound effect upon their lives. I've always said you can look at the pictures of Abraham Lincoln before he became in office and then look at him during the time of the Civil War, and you could see the peril in his face, the hollowness of his eyes. You could see the psychological distress that had been brought up into that man's life because of the Civil War. He woke up day after day, night after night, and the only thing that he had to look at whenever he looked out of his back bay window was death and despair. Death and despair that had come in the form of war. You keep in mind that these pestilences that the Bible talks about can come in many different forms. That's what I'm telling you about, different levels. It can come in many different forms. If it don't come in the form of one thing, it can come in the form of something else. Regardless whether it's too much rain, not enough rain, hurricanes, volcanoes, earthquakes, solar flares, meteor displacencies out of the universe, and of course, plagues. And that's what it is this time. It's a plague. It's basically God's way of culling the herd. And if you can't figure that out by now, then obviously you're out of touch with reality towards who's actually in control of the universe. He's not only in control of one planet, but he's in control of all the planets. And yes, that includes our lives. And whenever things get so out of balance, unproportionately out of balance, that's whenever the big guy steps in and shows humanity how the cow's going to eat the cabbage. And you'll eat it or you'll do without. Because this is his invention. This is his design. This is his creation. We did not create the creation that we see and are a part of. God Almighty did. El Shaddai did. So please take notice of what you're experiencing. And I pray to God that you'll do the right thing as far as being submissive during this time of trial and error. Good luck to all of us, as we've said before and we continue to say again, at the Windmill Ministries missions here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, and shalom.